My name is Joe. I'm the clinical director of Avenues Recovery. Like Rob let you know, this is a drug and alcohol treatment center. It is in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, so just over the bridge from New Jersey, maybe about 15-20 minutes from Trenton. The type of facility that Avenues is, it has people coming there when they are, like many rehabs, broken at their lowest. They're there because they are looking for something that they haven't been able to find. I have a bunch of slides, and I have them there if we need them, but I really want to make this more interactive. I want to make this more of a conversation and kind of talk to you guys about what addiction is, how people can combat addiction, how people fall into addiction, see how it impacts people's lives, and have a conversation about what we could do about this as a community. What people could do about this from a parish level, from a family level, and overall community level. So the way I named this, from denial and despair to hope and healing, we really mean that, because when people are in active addiction, they don't see what's going on right in front of them. It could be in every facet of their life. It could be in their job, it could be in their finances, it could be in their relationships, and they are not able to see it. It is not lying on purpose, it is dishonesty to yourself. It is living with blinders on. And when we say hope and healing, that's what treatment does. That's what meetings do. That's what churches do. They give people hope when they believe they have no hope at all. They say, you can do this, when they don't think they could do it. This is giving them support. This is giving them a hand when they have slapped away every single hand to try to help them. So addiction is, as you guys might know, one of the biggest problems in our country right now. You might hear on the news about the opioid epidemic. I was watching the news not too long ago, and Chris Christie said that we're in September right now. There's a 9/11 happening every 2 weeks in this country. This is something that we talk about every single year, over a decade later. This is happening every 2 weeks in our country, just based off the opioid epidemic. This is not talking about any other drugs and alcohol. This is not taking into consideration things that we might see on a regular basis. They go through waves. You know, in the past, it may be have been cocaine. In the past, it may have been alcohol. Right now, opiates are the biggest thing. So that's what's happening in our country. What can we do about this? Everyone here is here for a reason. Maybe you yourself have been impacted by addiction. Maybe a family member has been impacted by addiction. But all we know that it's a serious problem. Typically, everyone is impacted by addiction. And why did this start? Where does it come from? What can we do about it? I very much believe that addiction is a spiritual topic. We are here right now. This is through the diocese. We have a number of churches getting together, and we're talking about this right now because it is a spiritual topic. When you're going to church, you're right there because it gives you fulfillment. It makes you feel whole. It gives you hope. It gives you spirituality. Everything that we're talking about right there that church can give you, that's what addiction takes away from you. You may have heard, I have a void in my life. I'm trying to fill it with something. People are filling their voids in life with drugs and alcohol. They might not know where it's coming from. Drugs and alcohol might be their best friend. It might be giving them that relationship that they don't have. They might be able to go to sleep at night, and it drones out those thoughts that are really perseverating over and over. That's causing them anxiety. It's causing them depression. That's what addiction is doing. It is filling that void in the most unhealthy way, and the consequences are tragic. It's impacting our families. It's impacting our brothers or sisters. It's impacting us in the most negative way. It's killing people. We're not trying to be dramatic about it. This is what's going on in our country. Addiction is killing the people that we love most. So when we are talking about it as a spiritual topic, a lot of times people are not savvy to treatment. I want to talk about treatment because that's one of the things that we use to combat it, but treatment is very much a spiritual place as well. When we're talking about addiction as a disease, it's a spiritual topic, but by definition, addiction is a disease, and I'll get into some of those. It's a disease because there's a predisposition to it. There's a predisposition to it like it is cancer, like it is diabetes. There is a predisposition that they are able to identify in a person's brain that it's genetic. In the past, they may have said this is a choice. This is a moral weakness. Someone wants to do that. They're selfish. At one point, a person, yes, has to choose if they are going to pick up or not, but there are things that implicate much bigger than it just being a choice. If people are losing their job and they're still continuing to use, why would they do that? This must be out of their control. If people are losing their marriage and they're still choosing to use, if people are losing every single dollar in their bank account that they're using for their children's college fund and they're still choosing to use, is this really a choice? With all these negative consequences, would people still choose to use drugs and alcohol, or is this a compulsion? So when we're talking about this as a disease, people here are looking for a cure to a disease typically. There's no magic pill. We're here talking about it because it's a spiritual topic, because the thing that combats this most is spirituality. It's finding that fulfillment in your life without drugs and alcohol. When we are looking at treatment centers, when we're looking at meetings that have nothing to do with formal treatment centers, one of the biggest things that combats addiction is the 12 steps. In the 12 steps, almost every single one of them, they have the word God. They have the word spirituality. We're going to go over those in a little bit. But what we want to do right now, what I wanted to start off with is talking about how addiction is a disease. This is not a choice. How this is a spiritual topic, and how spirituality is the thing that people are finding most successful in treating it. There is no cure. This is a lifelong process. Combating addiction is something that takes continuous effort. But when we are doing this, we are hopeful. We have faith that this is something that you can combat. So I'm going to go over some of the logistical kind of pieces, what addiction is, and then I want to make it more interactive again. But some of these topics are important. Why choose treatment? Treatment can be defined a lot of different ways, but it's helping you know that you're not alone. It's giving you the support from your peers, because when you are in active addiction, at one time it was fun. At one time it was a high school party and you're drinking and everyone is having the best time of their life. When it gets further, when we're talking about addiction, it's not that recreational use. This is when you are by yourself. You're not going out with your family. You're skipping those dinners. You're skipping those recitals. You're skipping all those things. You are by yourself. So going to treatment makes you realize that there is support. My story might be unique to me, but there have been people that have been through this, and you might be able to give them perspective, and they might be able to give you perspective, feedback, saying, this worked for me, maybe it'll work for you. When you're relating in healthy ways, this is not finding support from people that are just sitting at a bar with you. That might be something of, they're giving me support, they're giving me friendship. This is someone that is going to take you to a meeting when you don't want to go. This is someone that's waking up in the morning and bringing you to church when you don't want to go. When you are feeling as low as you possibly can and you don't think that you could face walking into a church. This is someone that's saying, you could do this. The community aspect, the fellowship, as I call it in AA and NA, is one of the biggest parts of this. Realizing that when you are doing this, you're not just doing this with your peers, you are doing this as an entire community. You believe that God is helping you, that your higher power. When people are going into treatment, they don't always define it as a God of what we might believe God, but this is someone that is helping them. This is a higher power, bigger than ourselves. This is a power saying that I can't do this by myself, but this is God's presence. This is Him in our life. So what is addiction exactly? We talked about it. We talked about feeling that void. We talked about how is it a disease? Is it a choice? Addiction is a primary chronic disease with genetic, psychological, and environmental factors influencing its development and manifestations. The disease is often progressive and fatal. It is characterized by continuous or periodic impaired control over using, preoccupation with the drug, and use despite the adverse consequences, and distortions in thinking, mostly noted by denial. These are all topics that we've brought up before, but this is how addiction is defined. Does everyone believe this?
My only question would be, been any studies on what the percentages are? I'm a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
On the percentages that are more environmental than they are genetic or psychological?
Absolutely. Yeah, there have been a lot of studies done. Is this something that started off with a predisposition? Is this something that is strictly environmental? And the answer that research really shows is both.
Okay.
So I brought up the topic of cancer earlier, how some people might have a predisposition to cancer. Just because you have a predisposition to a disease does not mean that you need to develop it. It could be in your system, and if you don't smoke cigarettes, there's a much higher chance that you're not going to develop cancer.
Or breed.
Or breed, sure. If you do, the chances go up exponentially. So when we're talking about environmental factors, we're talking about, at the end, we're going to talk about prevention.
Okay.
Putting yourself in a situation where the chances, if you know that everyone in your family is an alcoholic, everyone in your family is a drug addict, or you've seen it, every single one of my uncles, every single one of my aunts, it might not be my parents, but I've seen it in my grandparents, you would want to be especially careful, vigilant about putting yourself in those risky places. The environmental factors is something that you can do something about. There aren't things that you can do to completely prevent it, but there are things that you can do to give yourself a better chance.
Thank you.
So that's a fantastic question. Thank you. So we're talking about being progressive. There are different phases of addiction. We talk about when you're experimenting as a child. And I say child, you're in high school. A lot of people start drinking before they even are 21. You have a fake ID, or you have a brother or sister that might get something for you, and back then it's still fun. Then you might notice the difference between yourself and others, where my friends go out on the weekends and they have a really good time, but you know what, when I'm watching the baseball game at night, I'll have a couple beers. And it's not a big deal because, you know, I'm not doing it all the time. I'm still going to work in the morning, I'm still functioning. You know, there are different levels of addiction, and it doesn't happen overnight. And even when you are in active addiction and you completely go abstinent, there are times when you can fall back into those old patterns, and it goes right back to where you left off. But that's the same thing that we're talking about with a progression of it's fun, and then you become a little bit more dependent, and then you might need a couple more beers before you're getting that same sensation. And then before you know it, you're doing that because you just want to feel normal. You can't think straight. You have anxiety, you have that depression just from living. And you can't feel like yourself unless you have that substance inside of you. That's tolerance, that's dependence. These are all topics that they bring up, but these are all the real parts of what addiction is. Yes?
Yeah, the aspect of society and also what's over the past 10, 15 years of society really degrading the purpose or the aspect of spirituality.
Yeah.
And bringing more almost like a lack of God in the society.
Yep.
And also that creating loneliness, and loneliness, precipitating,
Yeah.
how do I get that feeling of being a friend to myself or being a friend to something.
Yep.
And that makes you more susceptible to doing this stuff because the others have been, quote unquote, marginalized by society. So now you go after this, and
Yes.
and then also, there's a rediscovery then of, hey, this is not going to get me anyplace. It's going to kill me.
It's hard to get to that point, though.
Yeah.
When you're in active addiction, it is hard to get to that point. And I agree with everything that you said.
Yeah, and I think the aspect of society and also the power of money and drugs being pushed out there
Yeah.
is really creating a situation which makes this very, very fertile ground.
Absolutely. Let me talk about that for a second, then I'll get right to your question. I really appreciate you bringing up society. We live in a society of technology right now. I go back and forth. I'm not touching anything. We don't need wires. We live in a society right now where everything is at our fingertips. Right now, we could have anything we want. If we lived in New York City, we're in Freehold right now, so maybe not exactly the same, but if any hour of the day, we could walk somewhere and get whatever we want. Bless you. That means that you could get any kind of Chinese food, any hour of the night. You could find Malaysian food, you could find Ethiopian food, you could find any type of food that you want, and that's just living in a big city. Everyone knows where to go, and they could Google it, right? Hey, where can I get this? Do you know what people could also Google? Where can I buy heroin in Philadelphia? I live in Philadelphia right now.
There's a delivery man.
Other delivery men, you don't even need that. You could
Through the mail.
go through the mail. You could order from overseas. You don't need to be 18. You don't need to be 21. We live in a society not just of drugs that are accessible to us at any moment of the day, but anything.
And there's a breakdown of communications. You know, you have your cell phones, you have your TV. Everyone's constantly watching TV.
Absolutely.
24/7 now. And you know, the first thing you do when you get into the house a lot of times is turn on the TV and just
Absolutely.
listen to, hey, what's the latest and greatest, and they're just throwing out, you know, you should look like that, or you should listen to this, you should be aware of that, and it creates a lack of communication, which creates a lack of trust.
And a lack of morals, a lack of values.
Right.
Because there's a lot more accessibility to things that could get us in trouble where there may have been a barrier. And that's what treatment a lot of time is. It's a barrier to those things that are easily accessible to you. You're not in your neighborhood. You're not in that environment where it is accessible to you. You are taking yourself away from there. You're taking your cell phone away. That's what they do in treatment. They take everything away. And they say, you need to get in the passenger seat. You need to follow the directions of people that are professionals. You need to follow the directions of people that have been through this before. Because our society says, you have pain, take a pill for it. You have anxiety, take a pill for it. You're sad, take a pill that makes you happy.
And I
That's
think
what our society tells us.
The loneliness that creates is unbelievable.
It creates loneliness, and it also fills that void of making you not feel lonely. So it's a double-edged sword. So our society of, I don't want to feel anything, or I want to feel everything, it's up to you, that can be given to you by drugs. And that is the earlier stages of recovery. I mean, that's the earlier stages of addiction, where it is all still fun, where you are feeling pleasurable. And then it very quickly turns on you. And it says, I'm not your friend anymore. I'm not making you feel good anymore. Now you need to take more and more of me to feel happy. Now you need to take more and more of me to feel less anxiety. You don't want to feel pain? That used to work, now it doesn't work anymore. You need to try on something stronger, harder. That's what...
I'm your mama, that's what it says.
Sure does, yeah. So some people do look at it, if spirituality is something that is going to combat this, so do we look at addiction like evil? You know, that's something that you could talk about as a community level of how are you going to combat this. And you have a question?
My question is this specifically for chemical dependencies, alcohol, drugs, or does it also include food and other types of addictions?
So
Because you seem to say...
what I'm talking about right now is substances, illicit substances, but this goes for all the same. It goes for sex, it goes for gambling, it goes for food, any of those things that are implementing our society in a negative way.
Okay, thank you.
All these same topics apply.
Could marijuana be addictive?
Absolutely. So in the treatment center that I work at Avenues, there are people that are there for heroin, and they see the negative effect that heroin has on them. So they're saying, I need to quit it, I have to stop it. But marijuana, I don't see the negative impact that it has on me. So believe it or not, that is one of the hardest things for people to give up because it's sneaky. And marijuana is legal in a lot of states. Guys, it can't be bad, right? It's legal. Alcohol is legal. Opiates are legal. Doctors prescribe them. So how could they be bad? That's the biggest argument that I hear all the time. And it's, but I'm still able to function on it. But how well are you functioning on it? Are you doing everything to the best of your ability? Or is it having a much bigger impact on you than you think until you actually quit, until you receive that abstinence? And that's what people find. That's what people will say over and over, that this is something that I never realized was having an impact on me because I still was able to fully function. And I was able to go to my family functions, and I wasn't missing on people that are doing other drugs. They're missing those things, and they could die from them. If you're under the influence when you're smoking weed, can you crash? Can you become more depressed because it's absolutely depressing, and can that lead to suicide? Absolutely, we find that over and over. So it doesn't have the physical kind of implications, but more than anything, it has that mental addiction.
Plus the THC levels are so much higher.
Absolutely. Yeah, just to talk on that for a second, when we're talking 40, 50 years ago, the THC levels may have been at 5%. They were closer to 40% of the same. If you're smoking a joint, it is more than triple what it used to be before. So it definitely has that impact on you. One thing that I find it interesting when people are still making the argument between whether this is a disease or whether this is a choice. If you were to take a picture of your brain before using drugs or alcohol, it would look a certain way. And then when you are in active addiction, if you're taking a picture of your brain, its physical shape would be different. Not just the neurons, something you can't see. The physical shape of your brain is actually different when you are in active addiction than when you are completely abstinent. Think about how powerful our brain is. And if it's physically in a different shape, think of the implications that it has on our thoughts, our feelings. It controls everything inside our body, our nervous system, everything. So the good news is, when you are completely abstinent, again, it goes back to that original shape, but it only happens from complete abstinence. One example I like to give when we are talking about the brain and addiction is something like, we're talking about anxiety, we're talking about stress. Something like stress. Can't touch it, intangible. You know, anxiety, you can't really take a picture of it. But something like stress can cause an ulcer inside you. It can manifest as something physically inside you happening from stress. That's just your brain. That is your thought process creating something inside you negative. The argument I make against that is when you combat that with positive thinking. Think of the positive impact that that could have on you, inside of you. That can make an enormous difference. That's why we have different techniques in treatment where they talk about cognitive behavioral therapy, where you are thinking about yourself in the most negative light possible because you've done negative things. You have stole, you have lied, you have cheated. You have done everything that you said you would never do. You did it. Even when you were partway in your addiction. Oh, other people do that, but I would never do that. I would never use a needle. You know, I use it another way, so I'm better than other people. You know, or I have a job that's really good, so I still have a lot of money. I'm fine. When it gets further, it goes, and then you steal. These are not people that are the stigma of society that they talk about, that are living under a bridge. These are doctors. These are lawyers. I work at a treatment center, and we have people that are there on scholarship that have no types of insurance, and we have people that are there that have great insurance, that work for the big companies, the big finance companies. They're there because the hospitals make them go there, because they can't have surgery, that you can't complete the surgery if they're going to have their hands shaking. There are people from all walks of life, and addiction does not discriminate. It absolutely does not. So the stigma that we were talking about before, the things that we said we would never do before, they all happen. And it happens much quicker than people think when they are living in denial. So I'm going a lot slower than I thought I would because we are just having a conversation. I'm going to skip over probably a lot of these. We talked about denial. So I'll just read the last sentence. If a person denies a condition that exists, there's no need to deal with something that doesn't exist. You're denying that this is even going on inside you. Rationalization. Only talking about part truths. Inability to be honest with yourself. Not going to treatment. Saying you could do it on your own. You could white knuckle it. This is not bigger than you. And then we have the influence of the family. I'm going to talk about this quickly because I do want to get to the treatment part of it, and I'm not sure what my time is looking like.
You're at 20 after,
Okay.
so like I got.
Okay. I don't. When did I start? About 2 o'clock? Something like that.
5 minutes to go.
Okay. This is a good one to throw out to the crowd. Helping our loved ones live in denial. So if we stop that halfway through, we'd say helping our loved ones. But are we helping them, or are we helping them live in denial? So why do people enable? It's a very important question.
Fear,
Absolutely. What are people afraid of?
abandonment,
Mm-hmm.
That's-
Yep.
But they failed. Yeah.
That's a big one.
Mhm.
Yep. What do you say?
I draw a line every day, being a good mother or an enabler.
And
Every day.
that's where the bottom one comes in, tough love. Of locking your door at night and saying, my child needs to sleep on the street tonight. Where they might not be able to eat because I'm not going to give them any money because I have no confidence that if I give them money,
He's gonna spend it on food.
it's not going to be on food. They'd rather eat out of the trash and buy drugs. They'd rather drink. That's the truth of it. This is ugly. We're not here talking about rainbows and butterflies. We're talking about the thing that's impacting our society in the deepest possible way. Families love their children. They love their brothers. They love their sisters. They love their wife, their husband, their aunt and uncle. They love them. They want to do everything they can for them. The best thing they could do is to say, you need help. I cannot help you. When I try to help you, it is making your addiction worse. It is making it progressive. It is making you lose your job because I'm giving you that out. I'm giving you money. Why do they need a job? I'm giving you a roof over your head. Why do they need to pay their rent? They're not going to. That's what enabling does. It is coming from the best possible place. It goes against every grain in a person's body when they love someone. Deeply against the grain. Saying, I want to help you, but the best thing that I could do is to say, maybe you need to talk to a professional. Maybe you need to go to a meeting. Maybe I love you that much, that those are the things that I'm going to do for you, even though it's breaking my heart. That's the opposite of enabling. It's using that tough love approach and saying, until you complete treatment, you're not welcome back in my house. Because every treatment that you've been to, the past 10, I brought you and you've left and I picked you up. This time I'm going to say, if you leave early, you are not welcome back in my house. That's what we see every single day. Consequences of addiction. Spiritually broken. Financially broke. Every single relationship that you have is tarnished. Occupationally, job to job, your boss might even tell you it's poor performance, or you were just showing up late. You were missing days. Why were you missing days? Why was your performance poor? You were hungover. Maybe you weren't even going under the influence. Maybe you were just out late the night before. Maybe it's been going on for a week straight. Maybe you look unpresentable. And the type of job that you have to be on your A game. Physically, your organs are shutting down. You can see it all over your face. Mentally, you've never been in bigger shambles. You can't think straight. You can't speak clearly. Your cognitions are all over the place. And emotionally, you're a wreck. Because all of those other areas of your life are deteriorating. So emotionally, you have never been in a worse place. So that progresses the addiction even worse. When all of these things are happening around you, it's screw it. Why do anything about it then? That's where treatment comes in. That's where the community comes in. That's where God comes in. That's where church comes in. Having faith for you when you have no faith. Having hope for you when you have no hope. Having courage. Having love for yourself when you honestly look in the mirror and you do not believe any of those things about yourself.
Excellent.
Yeah, it is.
What does everyone think about that?
It is,
Excellent.
it is necessary.
When you are spiritually broken, when you're angry, depressed, guilty, when you truly do not like yourself, like we were talking about.
Does it need to be voluntary?
Interesting question. I'd bet that we could split a line right down the middle of the room and people would feel different ways. With an intervention, people are not always willing. They are forced into treatment.
A 14-year-old is different from a 44-year-old.
People have different drugs of choice. People have different age. People have different levels of progression. Does it need to be voluntary? People go into treatment at all different levels of motivation, of encouragement from those around you. At my treatment center, I've had parents drop their teenagers off and say, They're your problem now. I'll see them in a year.
So in your experience, does it have to be rock bottom or does it have to be voluntary?
I don't have an answer. When I say it's split down the middle,
It is.
I'm split down the middle also. I think it's different for everyone because I don't think that treatment is the same for any person. I think for some people, they need to be forced, and for some people, they can choose it. And it doesn't need to be that I lost every single thing I've had in my life. I've seen people be successful with treatment without losing every single thing that they've had. It does push a person in the right direction, though, if they have lost those things. I see your arm in the back.
Yeah, did you ever see the movie War Room?
No.
What is it?
War Room?
It's a
WAR?
story about a lady who was married and she had hard times in her marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And her husband died, and now when she's at an older age, she's seen the older people having breakups in their marriages. And she tells them what to do to keep that marriage together.
Huh.
Goes to the young people, right?
Yeah.
To me, that's the same thing with addictions, because addictions, once the kid leaves the house, the family has to know what to do, and that movie brings that point down, I think, perfectly. Get into prayer.
Mm-hmm.
I think that should be in the churches, that movie.
I appreciate that. I'm going to look into that. Prayer is a very big part of this because that's also getting outside of yourself. And that's saying that there's something that I could do about this. I don't need to be in a meeting. I don't need to be in treatment. I can do it right in my head right now. And Viktor Frankl talked about that in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, where people could take away and strip down every single part of him and make him not feel human. But no one could go in your head. No one could be there praying, having that belief that there's someone listening to you and that you aren't alone no matter where you are. No matter if you're in a cell, no matter if you are sitting by yourself at your house, you could have someone there with you. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
We had perfect strangers come to our home and take our 15-year-old and our 17-year-old at different times. You know, they had an intervention.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the hardest thing that I've ever had to do for my child. But where you say does treatment need to be voluntary like that, they were really, and my son is now at treatment and he still hasn't talked to us in 3 weeks because we took him out of our home like that way.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, totally, he lost our trust, and I mean, we did it to save his life.
Absolutely.
And so I would never regret doing it. But,
No way.
But as a child, like if it happened to me and I was him, I would feel the same way. I would be like, what did my mother just do to me?
Mhm.
So it's really difficult. Like,
Oh, difficult's an understatement. To be able to be a mother and to say that I have to have strangers rip my child out of my house. He may have really physically needed to be brought out. That's happened. But think about the pain, think about the lack of trust that he's built in the family, the impact that he's having on the entire system of a family,
And the other siblings.
everyone.
You don't trust them.
And you are giving him the gift of life. Because if you didn't stop him, it could have led to a very dangerous place. So I was just given the couple minutes warning, so I'm going to move forward. Hope and healing. We're going to go through these, but just to point out, power greater than ourselves, God, spirituality. The 12 steps saves people's lives. This is a spiritual solution. Millions of people have been helped, saved. Communities have been saved by the 12 steps. When you look through there, if you look through my packet, we talk about how these things that are in the 12 steps are connected to religious topics. Let me go through this. We have interventions, detox, inpatient, outpatient. I don't have time for that. I'm going to go straight here. The psychospirituality of addiction. And this is kind of how I'll wrap things up. The only way, I see your hand up, I'll get to you right through these. The only way that you can combat addiction is through surrender. You need to let go of control, or else addiction will control you for the rest of your life. The only way that you can combat addiction is with surrender. I said it before, it's getting in the passenger seat and letting others make your decisions for you. That takes humility. That takes swallowing your pride. That goes against, if we're an adult, who's going to tell me what to do? There might even be a counselor that's half my age telling me what to do? Are you kidding me? He's never been through my life. He doesn't know how hard my life has been. That doesn't matter. You need to swallow all of your pride for treatment to work, for you to combat addiction. All that needs to be thrown out the window. When you surrender, the 12 steps talk about having a spiritual awakening. We can have a debate about what that means. To me, maybe you found God. Maybe you filled that void with something other than drugs and alcohol, and maybe you filled it with something spiritual. Because the last of the 12 steps, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. We sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out.
Excellent.
A spiritual awakening means filling that void with God and with something other than drugs and alcohol, and with something bigger than ourselves. You feel fulfilled. If you go to church, you're fulfilled with light. You have an awareness of what's around you. All of those things that have always been around you your entire life, that could help you, that you've been blinding yourself to, that you've been numbing yourself to, all those emotions that you haven't felt for a long time, they've been there the entire time. You're just becoming aware. You're awakening to this. You're becoming aware of all these things that have been there the entire time. That's what a spiritual awakening means to me. It means something different to every single person. You let go of control. You have faith that if you have continuous effort, this is something that you could combat. You have to go to those meetings. You have to continue going to church. You have to continue to reach out to those around you and say, hold me accountable. I can't hold myself accountable. It's been 5 years, and I haven't touched a drug. I haven't had a sip of alcohol. I still need to do these things on a regular basis. Have an appreciation for life. Having gratitude. Realizing that life is good. That when you're in that deep, dark place, it didn't seem like it was, but it is. When you open your eyes, it's a fantastic place, and that motivates you. Passing on God's message. That is a big part of the fellowship. It's taking in people that were not there at the beginning and saying, I'll be there for you. I don't know you, you're a stranger, but I'm going to be there for you. That's very much a spiritual topic, and that's very much what goes on in treatment. And living as part of a community. That could be the fellowship of AA, NA, that could be going to church, that could be your family. Those could be your friends. It's surrounding yourself with people that will help you and hold you accountable and show you that love the way that you deserve it.
Excellent.
So, thank you. Thanks very much. I appreciate that. I've been to lectures like this before, and I don't have any of my cards on me. One thing that I find is more effective is if people want to take out their phone, I have one cell phone on me. I don't have a work phone. It doesn't matter if you have insurance. It doesn't matter if you don't have insurance. If you need help, I want everyone to take down my cell phone number and call me, and we'll be able to point you in the right direction. So, number is 609 213 8282.
And what's your first name?
First name is Joe.
J-O-A?
J. That's correct.
It's on the back of the handout.
Yep, it's on the handout there.
Oh, thank you.
Yep, and the cell phone's there as well.
Thank you.
This is part of what this is all about. So please don't hesitate, and thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.